Oh, sorry, I didn't unmute myself.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, President Wang, President
Hello.
Shao. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good
Professor
afternoon.
Kerry Brown. Good afternoon.
Hello.
大家的麦都打开了。
我打
这打开吧。
好吧，那我们开始了，10点就开始了啊，有个倒计时开始。
还有3分钟。
啊？
还有3分钟。
哦，还有3分钟哦，那行，那等到整点开始，那就等到整点吧。
Can you hear me, Angela?
Sure, loud and
Yeah.
clear. Very good. Thank you.
So Angela,
Can you
where are
hear
you
me?
based
In
Shanghai
Singapore.
or-
In
Singapore,
Singapore. Yeah.
Okay, good.
If I'm in China, I'll fly to meet you in person. But
Okay, good.
currently
Good.
could not go back to China.
So we received the book of Kerry's new book here. Looks very nice.
Hi,
Thank
can you hear
you.
me? Can you hear me okay? Ah,
Yeah,
good,
we can
good.
hear you. Yeah,
I
hear
can
you.
hear
Okay,
you.
good. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
你说话那个有个麦克。
然后您能不能让这位嘉宾把这个摄像头往上一点？他这个位置太靠下了，挡住他的脸了。
摄像头啊。
对，那上面这个少留一
那
点。
那个曾宇超他说话的时候，这个麦克是哪个呢？两个麦克都
摄像头怎么
吗？
说这个？对。
他的这个话筒是
我
两个都他不是还有连那个电话上，他说话的时候是两个话筒干扰吗
？lower 他的摄像头还是摄像头往上？
就让他把这个头往上，头放大一点。
不是，现在就是他需要这个，因为我不太会表达这个英文，不知道这不是让他把那个，你说他这个头现在是露不全。
Would you please put your camera a little lower?
对，让他讲吧，因为我不懂技术。
说话看这个镜头，他待会儿会给你特写。咱们准时开始吧。
Okay, distinguished guests, the live stream will start in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, now it's 4 o'clock. Our event will begin on time. Distinguished guests, dear friends, and audience online, good afternoon. I'm Shirley, Director of CCG Publishing Center. Today is our great honor to host this book launch
Our
in
event
CCG
will begin on
headquarters.
time.
This book is authored by
Distinguished
Professor
guests,
Kerry
dear
Brown,
friends, and
with a
audience
title
online, good
China Through
afternoon.
European
I'm
Eyes,
Shirley, Director of
800
CCG
years
Publishing
of culture
Center.
and
Today
intellectual
is our
encounter.
great honor
It's
to host this
Before we
book
further
launch. Our
explore
event
this encounter, please let me to introduce our distinguished guests. Kerry Brown, Professor of Chinese Studies and Director of the Law China Institution at King's College London. Professor Brown is online from UK. And Angela Li Xidong, Assistant Director of World Scientific Publishing. Angela is online from Singapore. Hello, Angela.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. And Chao Weibing, President and Editor-in-Chief of China Translation and Publishing House. As I know, Mr. Chow is a very famous publisher in Chinese publishing industry. He has a very brilliant career. In the past, as I know, you have been the editor-in-chief of one of China's most famous publishing house, that is CITIC Press. Before that, he's the vice editor-in-chief of China business or economic or business publishing house. Now he's in charge of China Translation and China Translation Publishing House, and published many bestsellers. As I know, last year, the most famous book in Chinese market is Metaverse. It's published by Mr. Chow. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for introducing to us so good books. And here is Dr. Wang Huiyao, president
the
of
most
CCP.
famous book in
And
Chinese
thank you all.
market is
Without your
Metaverse.
contribution, I think
It's
it's
published
impossible
by
to
Mr.
make
Chow.
happen this
Thank
book
you, Ms.
release
Chow, for
and the future,
introducing
the
to us
Chinese edition release.
so good books.
My special
And
thanks
here is
want to give
Dr.
to
Wang
Dr.
Huiyao,
Wang.
president
The
of
most
CCP.
famous book in Chinese market is CCG Publishing Center to translate this book into Chinese. I hope to invite you to give an opening remark. Please, Dr.
And
Wang.
here is Dr.
Okay, thank you.
Most famous book in
So good afternoon, Kerry, and also good morning, Kerry, and good afternoon, Angela, and of course, so also thanks, Minister Chow, also attending our event today. So we are very honored and extremely happy to take this opportunity to, together with the scientific publishing house, to promote and actually introduce the latest new book by Professor Kerry Brown, China Through the European Eyes, 800 Years of a Cultural and Intellectual Encounter. So this is really a very new book, but in a sense that new, that we have analyzed and also discussed many philosophies, well-known figures, highly intellectual scholars in the history of Europe, and then on their encounter and their studies on China and on their statement as well. So Professor Kerry Brown has made a very great efforts in going through all the literature, and he really digging out those very impressive, very relevant, I mean, highly relevant today for this European views on China. China Through the European Eyes. I think it's really a great title of that. So Center for China Globalization is really very committed to promote mutual understanding, of course, common understanding between China and the outside world. And European has always been a fascinating continent, and has a rich history, has a lot of humanity and Renaissance and Enlightenment, in a contribution to the history of mankind. So we're very happy that this new book has been now published in English world now, and so I think also our timing is very good. We are now seeing a big crisis happening in Ukraine, that has got all the world attention, and so also there's a huge interest in China to know more about European history and also its development. So this book actually just released now is giving a very good account of what European well-known scholars, historians and philosophies and great artists, what their views on China. And so I think it helps to promote the understanding of these European countries and China, and of course also for Chinese to understand how historically European thinks on China, and how they look at the China through the historically European eyes. So this is absolutely fascinating book. So we will hear more later from Kerry of his latest book. But also we are also very happy to have invited the President Chow to attend, because his publishing house is called China Translating Press, which is one of the best press publishing press in China. And this book has already been translated by CCG and will be published by Mr. Chow's publishing house. That's why we are inviting him to come today to witness this English release here in China. And of course, we are very thankful for Angela Dong for the scientific publishing, which is really have a very unique views or unique eyes of choosing this book for the English world. But I think, as a Center for China, as a Chinese translator for this book, we are very happy and very pleased to co-organize this publishing event with our partner in Singapore, Scientific Publishing. So now I will just give a brief comment here, and then we'll hear more from our keynote today and also our publisher as well. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. Thank you for your remark. And now I want to invite Angela Dong to give a speech from the publisher's perspective, please.
Okay, thank you. Let me share the screen. So can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Dear President Wang Huiya and President Xiao Weibing, dear Professor Kerry Brown, and also Shirley, I'm so honored to join you this afternoon on behalf of World Scientific Publishing. And World Scientific is very proud to have published Professor Kerry Brown's book, China Through European Eyes, 800 Years of Cultural and Intellectual Encounter. And I also appreciate that Center for China and Globalization have devoted so much time and energy to translating this book into Chinese, and appreciate President Xiao Weibing and your team from China Translation Publishing House to publish the Chinese version. Okay, so this book, China Through European Eyes, 800 Years of Cultural and Intellectual Encounter, provides a unique reader's perspective on the conceptualization of China by Europeans. It is a valuable collection of main writings of 16 key European figures from a time of Marco Polo. Those are the figures whose ideas and views have the long-lasting impact on European culture. And this book also showcases the long history of interaction between Chinese and Europeans. The ideas and views from this book also provides inspirations for us in today and even for future the communication and engagement between Europe and China, and also for the dialogue between East and West. Professor Brown is one of the top China study experts in the world. And actually, this is also the 5th book we published for him. And thanks to his unremitting efforts, he is a very prolific writer. He published many books and enabled the English world readers to have a deeper and better understanding of China, Chinese people, and Chinese culture. So Professor Brown is not just an author, and he's one of the series editors of our book series, China's Belt and Road Initiative, and he's also editorial board member of our journal, China Quarterly of International Strategic Studies. As President Wang just mentioned, World Scientific have a unique value preparation. We focus on contemporary China studies. We have published more than 800 books related to China, China's business management, economics, finance, politics, and international relations. But China study is not just the one core areas for us. In fact, we have a very diversified publishing program. Okay, I would like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce our company to you as well. So World Scientific is a leading international scientific academic publisher. The company was founded in 1981 in Singapore. This is our headquarters building, and I would like to invite you to visit our company in the future. Currently, we have 12 overseas offices, and we have global presence in 115 countries through our offline and online distribution channels. We publish 600 new titles and 140 journals annually. Our key subjects including physics, maths, computer science, medical science, business and management, economics, and finance. We also publish a lot of books for high level scholars like Nobel laureates, Wolf Prize winners, and Professor Kerry Brown, and many other China experts and China watchers. And many books have been adopted by prestigious universities worldwide, including Harvard, Yale, King's College London, and Peking University, Tsinghua University, and many others. So our mission is to develop the highest quality of knowledge-based products and services for the academic, scientific, professional research, and student communities worldwide. We are committed to developing and publishing high-quality books to disseminate knowledge, to connecting scholars from East-West. And we look forward to publishing more quality books for Professor Kerry Brown. And we also look forward to more collaboration with Center for China and Globalization and China Translation and Publishing House. These are our books, and thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for your introduction. I myself work in the publishing industry for many years. As I know, it's really not easy to publish a book full of historical knowledge and excerpts from famous works. So please convey my thanks to your hard work editorial team. Tell them we in CCG love this book, and I believe more Chinese readers will love this book too. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now let me invite the author, Professor Kerry Brown from King's College London, to release his new book. As I know, Professor Brown has many years experience in China and also wrote over 20 books on China. Thank you so much for your research and study on China. Please, Professor Brown.
Great, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. I'd like to thank Dr. Wang for all of his continuing support and his great collaboration over the last few years since we met, I think, with Chatham House and a delegation in Beijing and at the Schwarzman College 3 or 4 years ago now. So that was a happy meeting, and we've continued very happy collaboration since. And for the work of the organization, the Center for China and Globalization, which I think is more and more important now. I'd also like to thank my publishers, World Scientific. I've worked with this publisher since, I believe, 2010, 2011, and published several books, and always been very happy experience. So I am very happy that we can continue our collaboration. We keep on hearing about how China and Europe are always trying to find out about each other and understand each other. But this is not a new issue. Europe has known China, and China has been engaged with Europe for many hundreds of years. Indeed, you could say the very earliest were the Portuguese, who of course colonized Macau for many hundreds of years until its return to China in 1999. But from then you had Dutch, British, French, and others come. Some of them came in the issue in the spirit of collaboration, some of them less happily. But the main thing was that China and Europe certainly have a lot of knowledge about each other and have a very big impact upon each other. And their mutual histories are deeply involved with each other. It's important, this book is really just a selection, and it's a selection of 16 key figures. And I chose these figures with my co-author, Gemma Changaradung, because they are significant figures in their own right. People like Leibniz, a great Enlightenment philosopher, people like Voltaire, an important again, Enlightenment political scientist and philosopher and writer. People like Montesquieu, who had a huge impact with his writings on the establishment of the United States political system through the spirit of the laws. People like Karl Marx, of course, enormously important in China and in Europe, who did write about China. And then people in the 20th century like Max Weber, the philosopher Bertrand Russell, the French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, and then the later figures, which I have in the book, Julia Kristeva and Roland Barthes, French philosophers. These are not figures who we associate with China necessarily. Hegel, who I also have a selection from, wrote about many other things and was the inspiration for some of Karl Marx's most important ideas. But they did specifically address the issue of China and its uniqueness. And I thought I would say a few words about why China was so unique and important for Europeans. We have to remember at the very beginning of the encounter between China and Europe, Europe was a predominantly Christian civilization. And the belief was that the world was only, I think, 4,000, 5,000 years old. It had been created by God in the book of Genesis with a definite time, which was a few thousand years before. And one of the great puzzles for Europeans when they learned about Chinese civilization was the idea that there had been a civilization in China which seemed to be older than the history of the world. And they struggled with this idea. How was it possible that you had a world created only a few thousand years ago, but then there seemed to be this civilization, the other side of the world, as far away as from you as possible, which predated this. This was a big, big problem. Yesterday, I was in the British Library reading a book from 1668 by a British writer, John Webb. In 1668, I don't think any British person had written about going to China, actually physically gone to China. Certainly Jesuits from Portugal and Italy had gone to China, but no British people, I think, had actually been recorded as going to China by that point. That didn't happen till later. There may have been tradespeople who accidentally went there, but I don't think there's any record of these. John Webb wrote in this book in 1668 about how the original language of the world, the very first language that humans spoke, must be Chinese. He said that this was the case because records from China went back so far. They went back beyond the Hebrew language, they went back beyond ancient Greek and ancient Latin, that it must be the original language of mankind. Of course, this wasn't the case, as we know, the two language families that humans speak now, there's the Chinese on one side and then the non-Chinese languages on the other. They're quite distinctive. But I think it showed a big, big struggle to understand this radically new, different culture, but a culture that people actually found much to admire. We now have much scholarship that shows that figures like Leibniz profoundly thought about Confucianism and what the ethical and moral system in China offered, and how that had a deep impact on Enlightenment thinking. And I think that we need to remember today this important lesson, that the Enlightenment had figures who were key in it, who did think hard about what Chinese philosophy and Chinese culture meant. And that figures a lot in many, many different writers, many more than the ones I've included here. Of course, after that point, as Europe industrialized, as the economic structure changed, the relationship became very, very different. Of course, in the 19th century, there became huge issues of conflict and difference and a kind of divergence. But I think we might take inspiration from these early hundreds of years of the relationship between China and Europe to think of ways in which we did often in the past work more harmoniously and have more curiosity about each other. I think that that's the most important lesson from looking at the important figures in this book. They did have a strong sense of curiosity and a willingness to learn from Chinese writers when they had access. Today, we have wonderful translations. We have great access to different writers from Chinese history. We have many studies and centers in Europe which specifically look at China. And I think that that should give us a great foundation to continue this mutual education, to which this book is a small contribution, I hope. Its main function is to put together these key figures so that we can have access to them more easily and think a bit about how over 800 years, but specifically over the last 400 or 500 years, Europe's history has been often one that has involved China. And I think China's history is one that often has involved Europeans. And I think that that is a fundamental lesson that we need to remember now and bear in mind in the future. Again, I thank my co-author, Gemma Cheng-Erdung, and I thank the editors and my other assistants and helpers for all of the work that they put into this, and the Center for China and Globalization for the wonderful support they've given. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Brown. Actually, it's a very interesting and a unique book because when we translate it, we find almost all the famous works by these well-known authors have been published in Chinese many years ago, but never before have an author to pick them up and select the excerpts and put together on the topic of China, on China. So it's very interesting. It's a unique perspective, to compiling this book. It's really interesting. And we in China, we can't wait for the Chinese edition can be published at an early date. That's why today, Mr. Chao from the China Translation and Publishing House was invited to the book launch. Ms. Chao is one of the best publishers in China with a very brilliant career. So I believe with his efforts, this book will be warmly welcomed by Chinese readers. And I also hope it can be sold very well, Mr. Chao. So I hope you sharing your thoughts on this book and its Chinese edition. Please.
今天呢，特别高兴啊，也特别荣幸，这次来到咱们全球化智库，这个王会长、王理事长是我们的这个我们这个智库呢，也是名满天下的这个全球化智库，在推进这个不同文明之间这个交流互鉴方面，做了非常有意义的价值工作和贡献。今天呢，我们因为这个书啊，这个布朗先生的书而结缘，而来到这里，又认识，又这次会面我们这个老朋友，我非常高兴。同时，我们跟这个任老师啊，也是多年的这个合作啊，也非常高兴。这个最近呢，我也注意到了我们这个世界科学这个出版社，原来对这个出版社不太了解，最近好像这个出版社推出了好几本好书啊。这个今天这个能在这个现场跟我们这个叫董女士是吧？董老师。
Dialogue, and it is my personal honor to meet Angela in person as well. And also Kerry Brown, Professor Kerry Brown. Kerry Brown is a very tall person, basically. And he's been engaged in China for so long time. Yes. And also we have a very long history of cooperation. And I've been working in the press for this year. But before that, I was working for CITIC Publishing Press, and I also had the honor in responsible for publishing one of your books as well. And we learned a lot from the publishing of that book as well, and many books have been published in China. So it is our honor. And I remember the former body of my organization is China Publishing House, which is basically translating and publishing the foreign titles books into China. and publish them, then circulate them into China, in China's market, to reach China's readership. And we've been engaged with a lot of foreign books, and also many of them are very excellent. And Kerry Brown's book is one of them. And these are very good and the best sellers in China. And the CCG this time is in charge of translation of this book, China Through European Eyes. 800 Years of Culture and Intellectual Encounter. This book was translated by CCG, and Dr. Wang and Angela have done a very great job in supporting the translation and the publishing of this book. In the second half of 2022, we are going to publish the more books, because we think that the critical issue in here is to let Chinese stories be told and introduce them into the world, and let the world people to know China, to know China's history. And these kind of books are very good window through which the foreigners can understand better about China. And countries of different kinds enjoying different cultures and different backgrounds. So we think that books is the best bridge to connect with people and to promote the mutual understanding. So this book is so good, very timely one. And I remember there is another book. That book is also very, very good. Its book is about telling Chinese life, A Tale of 5 Cities. And that book tells the very vivid life of Chinese people in the cities. And this book is even better because this is talking about the 800 years of history, the 800 years of history. So is it possible that the stories after 1970s, the big issues happening in China, can be introduced to Europe, and what perspectives taken by European people about China after 1970s? So probably, is it possible that you can publish something like that into a book, so that we can publish a book like that? And I heard Dr. Wang said that the patterns of the international relations between countries have changed fundamentally, especially the conflicts and wars between Ukraine and Russia has a lot of implications in the future, which will be very prolonged. So we think that we have to reshuffle our perspectives in looking into the relations between East and West. So possibly, Kerry Brown, we really want to invite you to write more things about the current things, current Europeans' perspectives about China, especially after 1970s and 80s and all the way till now.
Thank you, Mr. Cho. And I think you want to publish the next book of Professor Brown. And also, Professor Brown, do you have answer to Mr. Cho's question?
Yeah, I think if we had gone beyond 1970s, the book would have been very, very big. I think it's because until the 1970s, it was there were very limited people who came to China. China was still more remote, and so for Western European intellectuals to write about China, it was a very big choice. You know, there are many other things they could write about, and most of them hadn't visited. I mean, in this book, the ones that had visited were Simone de Beauvoir, Julia Kristeva, Roland Barthes, Bertrand Russell, and then the other writers, if I remember rightly, apart from the travelers in the 19th century, didn't visit. They wrote about China from afar. But really, since the 1970s, after the opening up of China, almost every major intellectual figure in Europe has visited China. I mean, Jacques Derrida, the French philosopher, you know, kind of the German kind of thinkers. I mean, Anthony Giddens, the British, I suppose you call it sociologist. I mean, everyone has sort of visited. And so it's kind of quite difficult to select what they would have written. Much of what they would have written would have not been easy to sort of, you know, kind of manage. There would have been a lot of new material. So I just thought 1970s at least meant we got up to the, you know, kind of opening up and reform period. And maybe there will be a second book when we can look at after 1978, because that is a different kind of period. And so that might be a project I can work on in the future.
Thank you, Professor Brown. And Dr. Wang, do you have something to share about, his release?
No, I heard, absolutely, I heard, you know, Kerry, you know, made a great presentation of his latest book, which is very, very significant. And also, I'm very thankful for World Scientific Publishing House for, you know, publish the English version, and also thank President Chow for publishing the translating in Chinese. So I think this book is really highly relevant time. You know, I agree with Kerry, you know, that we look at past 800 years of what European eyes through the European eyes on China, but that gives a lot of reflection of historically viewed China. And of course, also there's a great changes taken place in the last 40, 50 years. Also, that has actually, as Kerry mentioned, could be the next project. But I think it's just before this 1970s, I think there is a really a gap that China and exchanging with the outside world. So with those prominent historical figures that they have actually talk about China and also discovered China and also really emphasize China, that really shows the heritage, the tradition, you know, that the attention that European has been given to China. And I'm also very glad to hear that Kerry mentioned that you went to the library and you saw this, one of the earliest language of course, Chinese was, so the civilization of both Chinese civilization and European civilizations are two longest civilizations and with others as well. So I think that it's important we revive this kind of both from historical and realistic at the present time to look at all angles, all backgrounds, and particularly I think there's a revival of the historical rediscovery of Chinese history, culture, and also viewed by the historian and philosophy enlighteners in the history of Europeans. So this is really great, you know, that occasion, and also a very timely, and also through the very good, this book, very structured, particularly single out all their China statement and writings. It's really a great job. So again, I want to congratulate World Scientific Publishing House and of course the author Kerry Brown and your co-author for making this available at this time, because China and the European relations probably at also all-time high, the importance. Yet there's a lot of misunderstanding, there could be mistrust, and so it's important that we have more discussions and more you know, tracing of the history views and historical views, and also of course as Mr. Chow mentioned, that we have to look at the current last 40, 50 years. So really we need a lot of a cultural dialogue and exchanges and philosophical thinking, and so that we may find there's a lot of common ground, a lot of common tradition, heritage, and then maybe we can set up a new understanding, a new narrative, and an acceptance of each other, and also work out for the human beings' future together. So this is really a great book that CCG is highly recommend. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wang. In my hand now, there are some questions from media. The first question is for Professor Brown, but I hope President Chow and Dr. Wang also can share your thoughts, because I think this question should talk on both sides. The question is, as a British expert on Chinese issues, you has in-depth research and reflections on China's development and China-UK relations, which have been very well reflected in your engrossing books such as China Life, A Tale of Five Cities. This year, 2022, marks the 15th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and the UK. Standing at a new historic starting point, what's your perspective on the bilateral relations between the two countries, and how can the two sides increase dialogue and exchange, as well as expand mutual beneficial cooperation? This question is from China Today.
Great. Yeah, so the 50th anniversary of ambassadorial level relations was only a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. In fact, Britain recognized the People's Republic of China on January the 6th, 1950. So I think it was the second or third European country to recognize the People's Republic soon after its foundation in 1949. And Britain did so because of its interest in Hong Kong at the time. But we were certainly one of the earliest, and we had a representation in China in the 1950s, indeed all the way through the last, the history of the People's Republic. Our embassy originally was next to Tiananmen Square in the old legation district in Beijing. And then in 1956, it moved to Guanghualu, where it remains to this day. So we have a long history and we know each other well. Indeed, you know, Britain's embassies to China, which started in the 1790s, had a permanent presence in Beijing from 1860. So this is quite a long history. What can we do for the future? I mean, I think we have to understand much better what we mean to each other and how we figure in each other's worlds, which is why I think the history is important. We don't, as British people, probably think about our history as much maybe as Chinese people. And I think we need to think about how we worked together in the past and how even in very difficult times, we always found ways of cooperating. I mean, even in the Cold War, in the very kind of midst of the Cold War, in the early 1960s, Rolls-Royce and other companies were active in China. And I think Rolls-Royce was active from 1961 in China. Shell and BP were active, had kind of offices in China, Standard Chartered, HSBC. We always worked together. We always worked together. And I think that's really important. The second thing I think is that we now have very big common area, actually. It's strange that there's so much argument between America, Europe, China. Actually, there's big areas of agreement. We don't disagree on climate change. We don't really disagree on actually managing pandemics. I mean, we know pandemics are things we've got to stop, even if we do it in different ways. We actually agree that nuclear proliferation is a problem. We actually agree a lot on, you know, kind of how to try and deal with sustainability. We collaborate on all sorts of areas of public health. My own college does a big nursing collaboration in Nanjing. Well, we have a lot of common areas, and I think we talk too much about our differences. We actually really do work a lot together. So I think in the future, we need to remember how much we've worked over many hundreds of years, not just decades, over hundreds of years, and how important that joint work was. And of course, there are differences, significant differences sometimes, but they are not the decisive thing. The fact is that we work in increasingly common frameworks. The UK has a unique history. Britain has a unique history with China. Some of it was not so good. Some of it was good. A lot of it we've forgotten. And I hope that our work together can remind people of how much we know about each other and how much we have worked. Finally, when I'm researching history, how much have I kind of learned that Britain and China have always collaborated in learning about each other. We would never have understood China without the enormous effort and help of Chinese translators, Chinese scholars, Chinese who moved to Britain, like students, scholars, other experts, and collaboration like this. We always need to collaborate. And I'm sure that many British people moved to China, worked in China, worked in companies, worked in schools. We would not understand each other without help from each other. I think this history of collaboration has often been forgotten, but we have collaborated way more than we have had conflict. And Britain and China, I think, need to remember that. Our history of collaboration is far, far bigger than our history of conflict and disagreement.
Thank you, Professor Brown. I have read your essay contributed to another book of CCG's Consensus or Conflict. From that essay, as I know, now in the UK, not many people who know Chinese very well, like an expert. Some that don't have a very, very good understanding of this country. So we do need experts like you to promote the understanding of the both countries, and hope we have a better cooperation and better future between the two countries. And President Chou, do you have suggestions on this topic?
谢谢主持人，我听了这个布朗先生的这个答复呢，很有感触。再加之我刚才跟这个王会长有个交流啊，就是我
And I was talking with Dr. Wang before this dialogue, talking about how to explore the future possibility of cooperation in the future. And I'd like to frame my thoughts about the publishing the books. So this book selected 16 scholars in Europe, their thoughts and their literatures and their framing and their language describing China. And the two aspects are very important. One experiencer, the other is observer. The understanding actually about these two kinds of intellectuals are very, very important, because some misconception is based on the misunderstanding about China and the China history. So I think from the perspectives of the historical intellectuals and the figures, to read and to understand China and to make judgment about China is very valuable. At the same time, about the readerships, and also to the question from online, I think that we have to select the perspective of looking into the future. Also, Angela, from the World Scientific Publishing House, they are also focusing on the titles of the science and of the sociology of the nature and finance and economic development and so on and so forth. Also, CCG has translated and promoted a lot of bestsellers and very intellectual books. And Kerry Brown, professor, is a very renowned professor, intellectual. And my press is also a kind of a bridge connecting the East and West by knowledge sharing. So I think that it is a very good and a common area for our future cooperation. For example, Professor Brown and the CCG, we can somehow select 16 or even 32 modern time intellectuals and scholars and select their thoughts in a kind of a series of books or a one title to observe China or experience China, to share with the world about their thoughts about China. I think that is also more practical.
Idea. Very good. Excellent. And Dr. Wang?
Yeah, no, I just want to add, very well, I think what Kerry has just mentioned, and also President Chow. And so what I think is actually Great Britain, I mean, and China has a long history now. And then I remember, there's so many people learning English. I mean, when I learned Follow Me, I mean, that was from UK, in my childhood time. So there was such a great tradition that has been exchanges. I think one of the things as Kerry mentioned, the business community actually is very, very strong. So this is actually UK now has actually become more economically independent in terms of getting out of the EU, but actually more flexible now to work with other countries. So I'm glad to see that UK is joining the CPTPP, which I think UK has an enormous role to play of this global Britain, that can connect in China, connecting Asia, and also the rest of the world. So there's enormous soft power that UK has in terms of global governance, global relations. So I hope that this UK independence, where I think President Macron and President Chancellor Scholz trying to have this European strategic independence, UK already has that. So we hope that we can have more collaboration in the years to come with UK. And of course, UK has such a great, one of the earliest pioneer of globalization. And so that can really continue the globalization momentum now with China added on. So I think there's a tremendous potential for both countries to collaborate. Angela.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Angela, do you have some thoughts to share about this question? Mm-hmm.
I think President Wang and President Shao's suggestions are very good, because also Prof. Brown's idea about communications and agreements between the two sides far outweigh conflicts and disagreements. So I mean, we can seek the common ground. And in the future, we'd like to publish more books. And actually, we continue to publish a lot of books on China. We even have a joint venture with Shanghai Century in Beijing. Just now, I issue one journal. Actually, it's a collaboration between World Scientific and Shanghai Institute of International Studies. Yeah, indeed, we have quite a lot also from China, as well as those from Western countries. I really appreciate Prof. Brown for all those years, always give us support and publish a lot of work with us. I really appreciate, because nowadays it's the information age. Every day people have a lot of information from social media, from traditional media. So what is the correct information? What is a high quality information? So academic works provide this kind of resources. It can be verified in history. It record history. It enlighten people. So we feel proud to publish works for great scholars like Prof. Brown, and we also look forward to more collaborations with CCG, with China Translation and Publishing House, because communication is really important. We can see nowadays the conflicts in Ukraine and also COVID-19, we need a global collaboration. So in this globalization age, even we can't meet each other, we can still connect each other by Zoom, just like today. And today's event, we have publicized through our special China Study Facebook channel and LinkedIn. We hope more people from West can know such kind of events. It's really valuable. And we can have the encounter with our author, Prof. Brown, and also with the top think tank president and top publisher, President Shao. So it's a great opportunity for us, and my pleasure joining all of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angela. We have 10 minutes left. I have a second question from media. The question is, currently we see that the world is in an era of division. How to forge a partnership between China and the world, especially the European Union, the EU? Who first?
Yeah, I mean, one idea I have is that in a similar way to how no one has ever put together the key documents from the last 800 years about European views of China, actually there's now from probably 1980, well, so the Europeans and China diplomatically recognized each other. The European Economic Community, the EEC, which existed until it became the European Union in 1993, I think, it diplomatically recognized the People's Republic of China in 1975. And since then, there's been lots of different documents produced by the Europeans about China. There was important documents in 1985, a trade agreement. There was an important document in the 1990s about strategic relations. The Chinese also produced white papers, I think 5 white papers about relations with Europeans over the last 20 years. The Europeans produced important documents about relations with China in 2006, 2016, 2019. And I think it will be good to put these all together because, again, we don't have a sense of what the context for the current relations between Europe and China are. They actually came from, very specific problems. They've had a long discussion with each other. I mean, Europe has 80 different dialogues with China, from intellectual property rights to food standards to, technical standards. I mean, a lot of these the UK, despite leaving Europe, is still part of. So these are significant partners. Now, I think Dr. Wang or someone mentioned earlier the idea under Macron of France of strategic sovereignty, autonomy. I mean, Europe wants to have more autonomy in its relations with China. And it has, this specific history, not just the history I've outlined in this book with my co-author, Gemma Dung, but also the history since the European Union kind of existed. And I think that would be an important collection of articles too, which should be done, because again, they're all separately, they're all over the place. Some are on websites, some are in books. If you put them together, you basically have a documentary history of this very important relationship between Europe and China, in the world now, between Europe and China, and what the different angles of it are and how it has developed over the last 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Brown. Do you have some to share?
No, I think I agree what Kerry just mentioned. I think that the EU, European and China is such a long civilization, and then has a lot of things in common. And so I think with time, now we are seeing the importance of each other, and I think also now it's a more critical time that we need to strengthen the European-China relations. And also now China is EU largest trading partner, and many European companies are doing big business in China. So I culturally, people-to-people exchange and many things. I see two continents has a lot of things in common, and so we should really deepen our understanding, avoid the conflict, and then play more active roles to safeguard the world peace and prosperity.
Thank you. So the book is about history, providing a lot of perspectives from history about the friendship, and some of them are dark moments and some of them are friendly moments from this 800 years when we are reflecting the history and looking into the future and looking at the present conflicts. It is not new, and but it is within our promotion, and we propose that the Cold War philosophy or dominancy thoughts has to be abandoned, because the world is inclusive, the world is diversified, because out of ourselves that there are a lot of other elements and other cultures and civilizations existing, waiting for us to communicate and deepen understanding reciprocally. And this kind of intertwinement between each other is more important. And the harmony of the world should be the mainstream of the world. Thank you.
The third question is from media for Professor Brown. The question is, John F. Kennedy, the former US president, once said in 1963, let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interests and to the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot and now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. The key words in Kennedy's statement are make the world safe for diversity. In your book, we clearly see that China is different from European countries from a historical perspective. So how today's Europeans to better understand China and its development, instead of letting a yellow peril revival feeling fears of China's rise? Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a huge question. I mean, just very briefly, I think we obviously need to study each other more. I mean, I think there's ways in which we need to also study China and what it's doing, rather than always thinking that our way of doing things is better. I think that's just not true. Obviously, it's never been true, and it's definitely not true now. So we have a lot of learning to do as Europeans. I think we need to think through more clearly what we, who we are. We need to work our own identity out much more. And I think also, as you've said, accept differences. Some differences are good, of course. So we have to accept differences and accept that pluralism and diversity. Thank you.
Okay, and it's almost 5 o'clock now, so time really fly very fast. Our book release will come to an end. Thank you, our distinguished guests, all the distinguished guests, and thank you, dear friends and our audience online. My special thanks and CCG's special thanks goes to Professor Kerry Brown. Thank you for your fascinating book. When you have the plan to write your next book, please keep us updated. Once you got the idea, we will try our best to publish in China. Yeah, we believe Chinese readers will love it. Thank you. And thank you all. And thank you, Angela. Thank you. And hope CCG can publish, can cooperate with your publishing house. Yeah, in future. More cooperation. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.